All right, so let me get to this story by the Daily News op-ed. Not signed by anybody. Anything that might convince the precious insufferables who have taken over Wall Street that they have had enough of exercising their First Amendment rights to the inconvenience of tens of thousands of people who actually have to work for a living. This bunch ought to get down on their knees in thanks that America's capitalist founding fathers saw it fit to protect the privileges. The privileges. It's not a right anymore. Remember, it was all about the Constitution yesterday, but today it's a privilege of the dumb and obnoxious along with everyone else. If the NYPD has made any tactical error in this episode, it was being too tolerant. Police also closed major intersection to traffic, forcing pedestrians to take the long way around. Further, and this is horrible, this is going to, folks, if you have children, again, please cover their ears. Further, the cops cordoned off the statue of the Wall Street Bull, depriving tourists of up-close and personal inspections.
For those who want an
Are you effing kidding me?
For those who want an up-close look at the bull's balls, I'm sorry, you're going to have to defer
Give
to
me
another
a break
day.
here. Unbelievable. Amid arrest, that senior officer was photographed applying pepper spray in a video that is being held up as evidence of a human rights violation, worthy of a trial at the International Criminal Court. It is conceivable that he could have kept his spray holstered. Then again, he was surrounded by chaos. No, in fact, he was not surrounded by chaos because there was a huge orange netting between him and all the protesters. And by all the protesters, I mean those half dozen women that were corralled. The right to free speech comes with responsibilities. It does not encompass a right to do just whatever you want, whenever you want, as these juveniles may one day learn. Now, Glenn Greenwald has a great piece on what's behind the scorn for these protests. He said, it's the nature of protests that take place outside of approved channels, an inevitable byproduct of disruptive dissent. Those who are most vested in safeguarding and legitimizing establishment prerogatives, which by definition includes establishment media outlets, are going to be hostile to those challenges. As the virtually universal disdain in these same circles for WikiLeaks, and before that the Iraq war protests demonstrated, the more effectively adversarial it is, the more establishment hostility it's going to provoke. Most of the scornful criticism have come from Democratic partisans who, like the politicians to whom they devote their fealty, feign populist opposition to Wall Street political gain. A significant aspect of this progressive disdain is grounded in the belief that the only valid form of political activism is support for Democratic Party candidates and a corresponding desire to undermine anything that distracts from that goal. Indeed, the loyalists of both parties have an interest in marginalizing anything that might serve as a vehicle for activism outside the fealty to one of two parties. I can tell you, the best instrument, in my estimation, to get the Democratic Party to do anything, or I should say one of. I think there's value in taking over local Democratic Party apparati, but I also think protests like this are extraordinarily helpful. The very idea that one can effectively battle Wall Street's corruption and control by working for the Democratic Party is absurd on its face. And I think that's a fairly valid point. I'm not sure it's mutually exclusive. But certainly if you exclusively work on behalf of the Democratic Party as the only means in which to deal with the corruption that emanates from Wall Street, I think you're going to be out of luck. Much of this progressive criticism consists of relatively, ostensibly well-intentioned tactical and organizational critiques of the protest. There wasn't a clear, unified message. It lacked a coherent media strategy. The neo-hippie participants were too off-putting to middle America. The resulting police brutality overwhelmed the message, etc., etc. That's the high-minded form from which most progressive scorn for the protest took. It's just not professionally organized or effective. Some of these critiques are ludicrous. Does anyone really not know what the basic message of the protest? I think it's fairly self-evident. Again, it's called Occupy Wall Street, not Occupy Central Park, not Occupy the Natural Museum of History, not Occupy Union Station, I guess, which would be in D.C. or Worcester, Massachusetts. Dismissing these incipient protests because they lack a fully developed, sophisticated professionalization is akin to pronouncing a 3-year-old child worthless because he can't read Schopenhauer. I even think that analogy is wrong. I actually think there is value in just the fact that they are exemplifying that there is anger. Anger that is so deep that people are willing to put their physical well-being in peril. Sleeping out on the streets. Risking pepper spray. Or dislocated shoulders. Or a beating from a cop. Or getting arrested. Or quitting their jobs. Or cutting back on their freelance work. What that shows, and what the message is that there is commitment to the anger. And the idea that they are not professionally organized should be, in fact, a value added, as the corporatists would say, to their protests. They are not funded by the Koch brothers, the AFP. They're not funded by these large institutional organizations. In fact, it's only today. And last night, some of the protesters went and joined a protest by the postal workers. We've talked about what's going on with the post office on this program in the past. But I believe today there is now local union support that's showing up, and perhaps some national unions showing up. They are drawing people to them, despite the fact that they don't have a sophisticated, although it is certainly becoming more sophisticated, media center that is feeding stories to the media.